Welcome to the Scoop Order. Happy Thursday. 5-star superstar wide receiver update. Nobody else has this, but we're on it. So we're going to go on that. We have a huge update for official visits. We're going to get into all that as always. We appreciate you guys. Enjoy this content. Please, if you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like. Click subscribe. Also, click that little alert bell. We are going to get into a huge recruiting weekend with Ohio State. Last weekend of official visitors, Davis and his juniors. A lot of guys that are ready to go, and we're going to get into that. But Nevada, Dakorian Moore is the guy that everyone is excited about. There's been a little bit of trepidation between Jamie French and Vernell Brown, but I think that the Bucks are turning a lot of the heat up on Dakorian Moore. What have you heard? What is going on with Dakorian Moore right now?
Well, understand this update's fluid because if you'd asked me this question last night, I would probably have given you a different answer. But as of right now, as we're sitting here today, I actually think the Buckeyes are trending for Dakorian Moore. And I know Dakorian Moore's got a visit to Oregon coming up, and those things are always perilous, and lots of things can change. But Ohio State, if you asked me last night, between Jamie French, Vernell Brown, and Dakorian Moore, I would have said emphatically, Vernell Brown. As I'm sitting here today, I would change that to Dakorian Moore. And but I've said this many times. Look, I view all these top guys. There isn't a J.J. Smith in the class, in my opinion. Now, other people can have a different opinion. That's fine. But I think all these, Quincy Porter, Dakorian Moore, Jamie French, Vernell Brown, are all in the same category of great wide receiver. And my money, I have a hunch it's Dakorian Moore right now. But again, I always say I reserve the right to change my mind. I reserve the right to come in tomorrow and go, I know I said Dakorian Moore, but now I'm going to switch it. But I don't know. I think Dakorian Moore, I think Ohio State feels best about Dakorian Moore right now. I think they feel like Vernell Brown's still in the game. I'm not getting that loving feeling about Jamie French. Haven't had that loving feeling about Jamie for quite some time, after thinking that he was, an Ohio State lean for a long time. But all I know is at the end of the day, we're going to end up with a great wide receiver class. But Dakorian Moore trending to the Buckeyes as of today. That's the latest of what I've got.
I think that Jamie French is probably dead in the water at this point. Vernell Brown is kind of not life support, but he's like whatever we have to be. But Dakorian Moore is the guy. When you after Bobcat Miller, who's a very much of a project, and you've got your two receivers that are good players, but they're not Dakorian, they're not Jamie French. I think that it opens up the gift basket of NIL money, and I think that this is a thing where Brian Hartline, who's been outstanding recruiting, is missing on a couple of guys right now that I think are going to go to Texas or LSU. And I think that DK Moore is a guy who wants to come to Ohio State, and we've got the hammer down to get this kid. So when you take a couple of projects at your receiver room and you've got kind of a annotated amount of money that you can give to them in NIL, I think when you take projects, then you can take a kid like DK Moore and you can pay him a little bit more. Pay him, a 7-figure deal to get him here, and I think he's a lot like David Sanders. I think he's going to be not a straight NIL play, but this is a kid. If you get this kid as a cherry on top to your number one overall class, this will be a game-breaking type kid. And again, I got his film going right now, and you can see what he can do. If you have him and J.J. Smith as your two top wide receivers, it's going to be terrifying for colleges and college defenses, but. This is kind of where I think Brian is, where Brian's been working hard to build that room, and it's a gift and a curse. When you're Brian Hartline, you're recruiting mostly 4- and 5-star kids that want to have substantial impacts early in their careers. Like it's tough when kids don't make it and kids aren't really on the track that they want to be on, or they're not playing as freshmen, they're not doing what they need to do. But I think DK Moore is a kid you can't deny. I think he's a kid that once you get him on campus, he's going to be a top 3 wide receiver. I mean, I think he's, I think as a prospect, he's better than Tate or Ennis. He's not as good as JJ, but I mean, he's a guy that as a freshman he'll be a major factor wherever he lands up. And I'm excited about this kid because again, I wasn't until today. I got a big update on him and said, hey, this is the guy they want us to have to clip on. This is the guy that we're not going to get beat on NIL on. And, so if you have Brian Hartline with infinite NIL money and his, his pedigree for getting guys into the league, like, I don't know what else you'd need. But this kid he is dynamite. His film is as good as I've seen as a wide receiver from his explosion standpoint. Nevada, what could DK Moore do to the 2025 Buckeyes? Because again, I know we're excited about the 24 season, but this kid will show up in 25. But what are your thoughts on him?
Well, look, I mean, I'm going to temper it a little bit because I already think it's a great class, and I think the class is going to be a legendary class. One of the highest rated classes. A kid like this would just kind of obviously it would.
Yeah.
I'm not even. It'd be the silly season if you added a kid like this to your class because you've already fulfilled so many needs with so many great players, and it's hard to to look at this class and think anything but a lot of future stars. But yeah, he would definitely take it up and down. I think it would just be more of an indication of the recruiting role that Brian Hartline, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and the entire staff is on right now. That you could pull a kid like this on top of everybody else that you got. I've always felt that when Nick Saban left Alabama, that there was a giant void left in college football, and that void's being filled by Ohio State as the now team, the number one team, kind of that national team that's ready to make that dynastic move. Getting a kid like this would just be further confirmation of my instinct that this is where Ohio State's moving to. But so, but to me, he's not a make or break recruit, kind of like David Sanders is for Justin Fry, because Hartline's been so successful in the past from doing these things. But it would just be a great addition to an already great class, and I'd be super excited if it happened.
Well, that's perfect. Let's pivot into David Sanders, Nevada. He's coming in this weekend. Again, there's a lot of smoke around Tennessee. What does David Sanders mean to this class? Because again, he's the guy that's, the Paris Johnson 2.0, the first round left tackle type guy. What does he mean? Is it a be all end all? What is the indictment on? I'm throwing this film real quick. What is the indictment on him with Justin Fry if we don't get David Sanders? Because he's a guy, he's got to commit before his season. He's the guy that I think has a lot of tools. He's a guy that, screams SEC kid, but, I don't know what else you would need when you've got Monica Daniels and Paris Johnson kind of screaming for him to go to Ohio State. That's his role model. That's his favorite player. But what are your thoughts on David Sanders Jr.? Because he's the guy, I think, every year there's a guy who's like the linchpin, the guy who's the cornerstone of every class. And, David Sanders Jr. is kind of that for this year. Even before the number one class, if we miss on David Sanders, I think it'll be a bad day. But what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I think that this is an interesting one because I think for Fry, this is a super important recruit. I mean, there couldn't be a more important recruit for Justin Fry's future and tenure at Ohio State than landing David Sanders, because there are open questions right now regarding his ability to recruit, his ability to land the big guys. He hasn't really demonstrated any ability to do it, and it is ironic. I know people hate it when we go to memory lane, but considering all the abuse that Greg Sirraw took when he was here, it's kind of funny to see. Now you look back on those recruiting classes and you're like, wow, man, I really miss those days where we're landing 5-star out-of-state kids every recruiting cycle. But I'm hoping this is the one, and I believe this will be the one that gets Fry off the schneid. But if it doesn't, I just think the pressure is going to be so pulled up on him. Having said that, I just look back on all these recruits, and you talk about those linchpin recruits, those guys that were so important. And, we had, shown the video and done the whole thing about JT Tuimoloau. Now, again, JT's been the furthest thing away from a bust, but it's not like he's been like make or break for Ohio State for the past 3 years. Like, oh my gosh, we got JT Tuimoloau. Can you imagine what life would be like if we hadn't gotten him, and where would our program be? And, I mean, he's been good, and I'm really glad we have him, and I'm really glad that we have him for a fourth year, which is something I would have never dreamed of, about him coming out of high school. But would it have been the end of days if we missed? I'm talking about in hindsight. Could we have somehow, replaced his 6 career sacks, or I don't even know what it is. I mean, it's not a lot, but I think that's why I've kind of tempered my enthusiasm on recruiting. One, until guys sign and get there. Two, that you got to make sure that they don't portal or leave if they're not playing right away. And three, they got to produce. So for Sanders, I think this is a really important commitment for Justin Fry. For Ohio State, I'm not sure how important that's just my opinion. Again, I realize that may be a minority view, and that's not because I have any lack of faith in us getting him. That I don't believe in. I just seen so many of these recruits come and go, and big guys, small guys, skilled guys in the South, guys don't go that are like, wow, we have to have him. If we don't have this recruit, I'm just going to be so disappointed, and I'm going to grow into a funk, and I'm not going to be able to, eat for days. And they don't turn out to be anything. So, I'm excited about every recruit. I say that. So if we got him, I'd be thrilled. Um, but if we don't get him, I think it's probably a bigger deal for Justin Fry than it is to me personally. But I'm sure, like, again, that might be a minority view. You may have a different view. You may look at it and go, Nevada, you don't know what you're talking about, because I'm looking at this kid and I'm seeing future star, can't miss player. And look, I am not sophisticated enough to be able to tell the difference on a high school offensive lineman in terms of who's going to be the star and who isn't. And I'll be the first one to tell you that. There's certain things, movement skills, hand placement, finish, certain things that I see. But man, I've been wrong on guys. I've been right on guys. But I might as well be throwing darts, because I'm just not sure. And I'm sure the All American there is much better at doing it than I am. But I really have trouble differentiating between the two, and I'm not going to lie.
Well, that's fine. And again, you might say that JT Tuimoloau has not been a bust, but this far in his career, he's been an absolute bust. And again, I think JT has got a lot of upside. I think he's a great kid, great family. But if you're the number one defensive end in the country and you don't affect the quarterback consistently, it doesn't really jive with me. Again, I've seen guys like Robert Kindici. I've seen Clowney. Clowney is probably the best prospect in the history of high school football. And like, he got after the quarterback substantially. And, JT, I know he played a lot as a freshman. It was kind of like mandated, hey, if I come, I'm starting as a freshman, I'm playing as a freshman, which is great. But he hasn't been a guy that affected the quarterback in a major way. Now, again, he had 2 insane games against Penn State, but if you like delete those games, man, his production has been abhorrent, like terrible. And again, I think he's a very nice kid, very nice family, but he has to dominate versus everybody, not just Penn State, not versus these turd right tackles he goes against. So I think JT Tuimoloau has been a huge bust. And again, I hate saying that, because again, I was at the airport when he committed, number one player in the country, number one guy in the universe, and took 7 extra months to commit, whatever. But when you're the number one player in the country, the number one defensive player in the country, like, you have to be the fact that JT's still here tells me all I need to know. Because again, if you're number one overall defensive end, you should have had 15 sacks your junior year, gone pro, been a top 5 pick, and away we go. Like Clowney, again, I watched Clowney's film as a high school senior, and it was the best film. And again, you guys can Google it or YouTube it or whatever. Clowney's film as a senior in high school is the best highlight tape I've ever seen in my life. And it's like, you watch that kid and it's like, okay, 3 and out, done, first overall pick. And he was. I mean, you watch this film as an 18-year-old, you're like, that guy's gone, over, done. And he was 3 and out to the league, first overall pick. And that's a draft with Khalil Mack and a bunch of other great players. And he was the guy, because he was that dude in high school. And with JT, I think he's been good. Do I think JT could play 15 years in the NFL? Absolutely. Could he be like a Cam Hayward? Absolutely, sure. But he's not a dynamic pass rusher, which has hurt him, kind of in NFL draft circles. Because if he was a monster pass rusher and a guy that could get 10, 15 sacks in the league, he'd have left last year. but he's been underwhelming over 3 years, and he's played a zillion snaps. And there's a lot of games where, frankly, like JT, as much as I love him to death, and I think he's a great kid, and great family, and great everything else, you don't really feel JT. Like, I mean, when you had Chase and you had Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa and I mean, even Johnny Simon. I mean, you had games where you could feel those guys, but you can't feel JT all the time. So I think that this is a swan song where he has to turn up a little bit and he has to play better. And I mean, he wasn't even the best defensive end on his team last year because Jack was much better than him the last 8 years or the last 8 games, excuse me. And I think that with JT, this is it's a great opportunity. I think that he's a guy that has really, he's worked hard. He's a great kid. The team loves him, but he has been underwhelming. And again, if I'm crazy, you can tell me. But look, there's guys that went pro after his third year that got drafted in the first round that weren't rated as high as JT, and kind of is what it is. So this is my opinion, and again, I could be wrong. But Nevada, any other thoughts on that? Because again, I think that JT, he's a victim, but he's also a guy he's been born with that pomp and circumstance where he's the first guy in his class and the number one overall guy in his class, and he committed later because of the COVID stuff. But what are your thoughts? Because again, I know I was a little hard on JT, but I just think that when you're that number one overall guy in the country, you better be like Javon Curse, you better be Dwight Freeney, you better be that dude who could affect the quarterback. And I don't think JT's done that. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think it just shows the, you know, I won't say the insignificance of recruiting rankings, because recruiting rankings are, they're meaningful. They're on a macro basis. They're meaningful. More 5 stars go on to have success than 4 stars, and more 4 stars than 3 stars. So I think there is some significance to the recruiting rankings, but it's not a perfect metric. And the differences between guys at the top, kind of bringing this full circle back to the conversation about Vernell Brown and Quincy Porter and Jamie French and Dakorian Moore. I just think the differences are so fine that it's that's why you just can't get too hung up about it. You got to take a step back and look at the big picture. Or is your school recruiting top-notch players? Because if you are, that generally foots to success, and it's very hard. And Michigan last year was kind of the outlier, a real significant outlier in terms of having success while not recruiting particularly well. I mean, borderline 9th class, 12th class, 8th class, 15th. I mean, recruiting does matter from that standpoint, but at the end of the day, it's about development. It's about production. You got to have the guys. And I just, I've said this a million times. I've never deviated from this. I refuse to get myself worked up after the Terrell Pryor commitment broke me because people were just dying. I mean, if anybody's lived through recruiting and you lived through the Terrell Pryor recruitment, as like and I was the guy on that one. I was like because that was the biggest national story, the biggest everything, and we were like the lone wolf out there that never wavered. Said Ohio State. We had it pretty early. Uncle Teddy was a great source on that. We were saying Ohio State's going to be when they were going to, it's going to be Oregon, it's going to be Michigan, it's going to be whomever, and that was crazy. But after that one, I swore that I would never get that worked up over a recruit not named Terrell Pryor, and I'm sticking to that. So like I said, David Sanders to me, man, I want him, and I'd be excited to have him, and I'd be excited for Justin Fry to see that he could close. I mean, he's got a chance to close this big fish right now. I mean, he's been to Tennessee. He done his thing. We talked about Georgia and their issues. Go get him. Go get him, Justin. He's coming in. You've got a all-star cast of other recruits around him. You've got every opportunity to do it. This is your moment. It's kind of like the Eminem song, the thing to 8 Mile. You've got one chance. This is your chance, Justin. Don't throw up all over don't throw up mom's spaghetti all over yourself there with when he's here. So get it done, and I think he can. I think it's going to be an exciting recruiting weekend, and I personally think it's going to be Justin Fry's finest hour. So we will see.
But you're not taking bets at that, though, right?
Dude, taking bets on recruits in 2024 is crazy, man. It's just, I like I said, it's changed. The game has changed. Recruiting used to be a game that you could beat. Like it was an inefficient game that you could beat. You could have information on it. You could get it out there. You could do it. But now with NIL and things like that, it's too wacky. It's too inefficient. And I just, like I said, we can give information. We can give you guys snapshots, points in time. But anybody taking any type of really strident views about recruiting, I think is crazy because it whipsaws every single day, and it did not used to be this way. So this is a different game for sure.
Totally agree. I've been there. Like I get it, and it's like this. It always goes back to, with James Franklin, who's a moron. He says when he was at Vanderbilt, coach apologized for saying he only hires assistants with attractive wives. So it's like, he said that because of recruiting. He's like, well, if you have an attractive wife, you probably can land some big fat 300-pound kid to come to your school. So we'll see. I mean, again, Ohio State has maybe not the most powerful NIL program, but they're top 2, top 3. I mean, maybe Oregon might smoke them or A&M, but I mean, we're not getting outbid for it. There's certain kids where the limiter has been taken off. So David Sanders Jr., Dakorian Moore, like we are not getting outbid on those two guys. Now, again, we're not getting outbid on certain guys. If you're a mid-tier guy and somebody wants to pay you like you're a top-tier guy, then that's fine. We'll let you go. But like when it's like David Sanders Jr. with Dakorian Moore, it's like we're gonna pay whatever costs. So again, I think that if you can't win when you have infinite money, it's really hard. It's like if you're playing Monopoly and you have infinite money and you still can't win, then I don't know how you can survive or work in this world. But that's just my opinion. Nevada, any other opinions before we get into our super chats?
No, I think for Ohio State's NIL, it's sufficient. All we wanted was Ohio State's NIL to be good enough so that we weren't getting blown out of the water on recruits left and right, and we're not. I mean, it really Ohio State's NIL is good enough that it actually swings back to being about confident relationships and being about selling NFL opportunities and stuff because they're not getting crushed by these deals. And so I think that Ohio State's done a credible job in NIL, so it's not an excuse. If you get beat on the recruit anymore, I don't think you can use the NIL excuse. I mean, it might be a reason, but it's not an excuse anymore. And I think for Ohio State, they're well aligned. They've got a great setup, and with Sanders, it's all there in front of them. Just got to go get it done and get it done. They got to close in this weekend.
What kind of odds do you give on that?
50%. I'd say 50%. I think it's fair. A 2-horse race right now. I think it's Ohio State and Tennessee. Tennessee, Davis Sanders. Yeah. So I think that's what's going to win. So I think it's a coin flip right now.
Totally agree. Real quick, if you guys are in the Toledo area, the Salute to Service free roll, open only to veterans and active duty military, is open Saturday, July 13th, which is a little bit away. Starts at noon, $0 buy-in. So if you guys are feeling anxious about winning some cards, you can do it. $100 free entry, $30K starting stock, 20-minute levels. Again, this is a huge opportunity to support our troops. Salute to service. This will be all goes to the troops. So we appreciate you guys. Again, I told my folks that I'd put this up here. So appreciate you guys for that. All right, Nevada, let's get some super chats rolling. Robert Floyd Bryant, thank you for the 10. I've been an Ohio State fan since I was a freshman in 1952. Wow, 18 years old and 52. I can't imagine what you've seen in your life. I am a big admirer of your show and want to thank you for all you do to support our military in our place. Well, I appreciate that. Again, I know that most of the Ohio State podcasts, they don't have the balls to say that they appreciate what our service members do and our police officers do, but we do because Nevada and I are the owners. So we're very pro-police. We're very pro-military. We're not owned by anybody, so we get to own our own little space. And we say, hey, we appreciate all you guys do. We know you guys go through heck every day. And so we're here to appreciate you guys. So again, we do our Pay It Forward program. We've signed up a ton of people from those disciplines between the military and the police department to our site, BuckeyeScoop.com. So, again, I appreciate you so much, Robert. Thank you so much. Nevada, Robert Floyd Brian, who's an Ultra member, gives us a 10. He says, I've been an Ohio State fan since he was a freshman in 1952, which is crazy. I'm a big admirer of your show, and I want to thank you for all you do to support our military and police. What are your thoughts on that? Because that is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's wow. You're a walking time capsule history. So, man, make sure you share your stories of stuff because you've seen it all, man. You've seen it all. That's Woody when they used to fly banners over the stadium to fire Woody Hayes and everything else. So it's wow. Like I said, just humbled that you're listening to the show. Humbled that we have such great people like yourself. Um, that appreciate the show and that like what we do. It's a very nice compliment, and I really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of amazing because that is yeah. I think about my father who passed away. He was born in '58, so he's born then. You're already like past your freshman year, so that's incredible amount of time. We appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for taking care of our troops. Kevin Newby, thank you for the 10. Watching clips of the cheaters. I think TSC is the school that cheats at E11. Can tell he's busting his butt to recruit elite dudes to our Buckeyes. Oh, Tavien St. Clair. Okay. You're watching clips of Tavien St. Clair at the Elite 11. So, again, I apologize because when I see TSC, I think it's like something like the cheaters up north or the school that cheats or whatever. So I apologize for messing that up completely. TSC is Tavien St. Clair at the Elite 11. He's busting his butt to recruit elite athletes to our Buckeyes. Our run of great QBs is great, but Tavien St. Clair is a true son of Ohio, and you can tell he straight up bleeds scarlet and gray. Well, nobody's rooting harder for Tavien St. Clair than Nevada and I, just because, again, I always root for kids that are from Ohio. It's like Troy Smith coming from Cleveland and being a Heisman winner, and you don't have to be from California or from Georgia or from wherever to be great and be at Ohio State. But Nevada, what are your thoughts? Kevin Newby, he says, watching clips of Tavien St. Clair at the Elite 11, you can tell he's busting his butt to recruit elite dudes to our Buckeyes. He loves our run of great QBs, but Tavien St. Clair is a true son of Ohio. You can tell he's straight plays scarlet and gray. What are your thoughts on Tavien St. Clair and what he can do recruiting at Elite 11? And I'm also going to throw in the layer of this weekend. He's flying in this weekend to be a part of the official visits with Dave Sanders Jr. and a bunch of other great players to try to drag them to Ohio State. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's been a tireless worker that's really kind of embraced the role as kind of the leader of the class, the guy that's going to go out there and find the other players, recruit the other players, get other things done. And I think for Tavien, it's this has been a great week at Elite 11. He's seen a lot of kids he knows already, but he's meeting some new ones as well. But not every quarterback embraces that role as kind of the leader of the class before they set the field, but he certainly has. And it's kind of a fun story because you go back a couple of years, and I'm not saying he was relatively unknown, but he was less known. Let's put it that way. And now you're talking about a kid that's an Elite 11 finalist, third of the thing, consensus 5-star, leader of the Ohio State class. Just a great story. And yeah, nobody I'm rooting hard. I root for all of them, but there's nobody I'm rooting harder for than Tavien St. Clair because I think he's great kid, Ohio kid, and easy to root for.
But I think you're right. I think he was totally on loan. I think he's a guy that who, he when you go through the process and you're like kind of a lesser known recruit, and we've seen this over and over again where you've seen guys that you project as sophomores because again, the problem with recruiting quarterbacks is most of them are offered as sophomores. So, sophomore year, Ohio State, we're thinking Jaden Daniels, who ended up going to Michigan, maybe Ryan Montgomery. But then, Tavien St. Clair like blossoms into this, monstrous, impossibly good prospect. And it pushes those guys away. Jaden Daniels goes to Michigan. Ryan Montgomery goes to Georgia. He'll probably transfer portal out after 5 minutes after Jaden Rashada shows up. So, I think that it's the thing where these guys, quarterbacks are tough, man. Because I'm telling you, if you're Chip Kelly, Ryan Day, even Corey Dennis when he's here, you have to go after these kids when they're freshmen. You have to offer them early. Try to get them in the boat when they're sophomores and try to get them to develop and grow. But, Tavien developed as kind of a late bloomer, and they went after him, and he jumped in the boat. So, you had to let some guys go. And, I think that it was probably an interesting conversation when you take Tavien St. Clair when Ryan Montgomery's in the same class, and Ryan probably thought he was going to be Ohio State's quarterback in that class, but didn't work out correctly. So it's interesting, but I'm very excited about this kid. He's got a lot of upside, a lot of momentum. He is a monstrous recruiter, which again, that can be good or bad. Again, I've seen quarterbacks in '02 that were the lead dog recruiters, and they ended up sucking when they got to Ohio State and being backups. So you might be recruiting guys for your backup quarterback who takes everyone's Heisman. So again, it kind of is what it is when you look at kind of that recruiting battle. But Tavien wants David Sanders here. He wants the biggest skill guys in the country here. So again, I applaud him for flying from the Lee 11 in Los Angeles straight to Columbus to help participate with everything. All right, Nevada, this is for you. Larry Daniels, 1. Thank you for being off. Thank you for the 5. How much did Knowles' cage rush hurt the DN stats? Your thoughts on that, Nevada?
I think it definitely held the defensive end stats down, but I think it also contributed to why Ohio State was such a disciplined, efficient defense last year. You look at their statistics, and even last year they were better than 2019, that legendary defense. It was one of the best defenses in school history, right up there with like 73. So I definitely think it's a different kind of defense. I think they're unleashing them more this year. They unleashed them more as the season went along. Jack Sawyer kind of had a mini coming out party against Missouri with the 3 sacks. So they're gonna do more of that. But that was something. People want to just kind of blow that off like, oh, that's an excuse, or oh, why did no? It's a something. It's part of the scheme that Knowles was running. It's a very disciplined scheme. It's a very regimented, orchestrated type of attack on defense, and it works. It shuts teams down, man. I mean, I think I'm right. I think that we'd shut out Missouri through 3 quarters last year in the bowl game without contributing any offense. So, our problems last year were not defensively, but I think what we were asking the defensive ends to do, certainly hurt their production. To me, the biggest complaint that I had about just while we're on defensive ends, and we've talked about this a bunch, but you just can't play those guys every snap. You and I have never seen anything like that before. I'm not sure it's ever happened before at any school ever, let alone Ohio State. So that's the thing. To me, that was like the big error. For Ryan, it was in his running game concepts, his predictability, his unwillingness to go for it 4th and 1 from the 46-yard line against that kind of stuff was the problem on offense. On defense, it was the rotation or the lack of rotations and the overuse of those guys. So those guys wore down. But I think we're gonna see a little bit of a lot different defense this year in terms of bringing less simulated pressure, more real pressure, more pressure for the defensive ends because they just have supreme confidence in the back end to bail them out if they don't get there in time. And that's a great thing to have for any defensive coordinator, and Knowles has that this year for sure.
Where did I start, Nevada? I don't even know. So, we had the cage rush, we had Chip, the whole deal. So, for me, I know people, especially voters that vote for the All-American Awards and the Hendricks Award for Best Defensive End, they're obsessed with sacks. Again, if you're a football player, you're a defensive end, outside linebacker, if you want to make All-American, if you want to make a Pro Bowl, if you want to do whatever, it's how many sacks do you have? That's it. That's the meta, is what it is. But it's like our defense as a total defense was incredible. Top 2, literally second in the nation last year. So, Jim Knowles, did he do the cage rush? Yeah, because you know why you do a cage rush? Because you have athletic quarterbacks to go against. Because a lot of these teams that stink and they don't have guys that are as good as, Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Egbuka or whoever on out split out. they've got quarterbacks that can run. So, you could be provocative and say, okay, every time that there's a pass rush, you can go inside, you can do a spin move, you can lose your rush lane, you can do whatever you want. And if there's a good scrambling quarterback, like he's gonna shred you. He's gonna like take a giant dump on your head. And I think that was something that Jim Knowles wanted to avoid. So again, as much as like sack numbers are great, and again, you'll watch, go watch NFL football. You can watch it with me, and you'll watch guys that are just like, I don't care. I'm trying to get mine. I'm gonna do an inside rush, get smoked, give up contain. The quarterback runs outside, gets 15, 20 yards, gets the first down, whatever, and it kills us. But like the way that Jim Knowles wanted these guys to rush was, it was a team based deal. So like if you had Trey Henderson or Quinshon Judkins say, hey, this week you guys are gonna be pass blocking. We're gonna throw it. The cornerbacks suck, so JJ's gonna eat, and Emeka's gonna eat, and Colonel Tate's gonna eat. So you guys have to pass block. Like, I mean, I don't know if I would mark down Trey Henderson and Quinshon for being team players to doing what Chip Kelly or Randy asked them to do, but that's what people do with Jackson or JT, because everyone's like, oh, Jack's a bust and JT's a bust, 2 5-stars and 6 sacks in their career or whatever. But they do what the coordinator tells them to do. And again, I think that if you look at the longevity of the National Football League and the guys that have been really good, like if there's a coordinator that says, hey, Cam Hayward, be a 3-4 defensive end and take care of that tackle and that guard and do what you got to do. Like, I mean, Cam's turned that into being also a Hall of Famer because he did exactly what the Steelers wanted him to do, as a 3-4 DN. So I think that JT and Jack are coming back with a vengeance because they were told by Jim Knowles and by Ryan Day and by whoever's in the Woody Hayes, hey, we're going to turn you guys loose. You guys are going to have a lot of artistic freedom to pass rush and go paint your palette, go get 10 sacks, go be a first-team All-American. Because, like, Jack and JT both want to be first-team All-Americans. You can't be an All-American with 2 sacks. So I think they're going to turn those guys up a little bit, and I think it's going to be really good for Ohio State and what's going on. Jermaine Goins, appreciate you. Thank you for the 5. If JT's a bust, whose fault is it, JT or Larry Johnson? I don't think, here's the problem. I don't think JT is a bust. But again, if you're the number 1 player in the country and you're a defensive end and you've got 6 sacks going into year 4, like that raises an eyebrow. Now, again, some of it's scheme dependent, but I think it's more JT than LJ because LJ's had Bosa, Chase Young, Draymond Jones, Davon Hamilton, $60 million extension guys in the league. I think, sometimes like with JT, JT is the first, guy in the entire country took, an extra 7 months to decide and number 1 overall player in the country. I mean, it kind of, glosses up the overall comparisons for him. I think it glosses up, where do you think this guy can be at if he's waiting this long? A lot like Terrell. Like, Terrell Pryor didn't commit on signing day. He committed a few months later. A lot of pomp, a lot of circumstance. He kind of opened up to criticism. It's like, well, if you're so good, why couldn't you commit on signing day? But like Terrell took his time, waited, came to Ohio State, and Terrell was the best player in the country for 2010, 2011. Obviously, when we lost him in 11, I knew we were in big trouble. But I don't think that it's Larry Johnson's fault. JT's bust. I think JT, with his body type and what he does, I don't think he was built to be a big time pressure guy, big time sack guy. But that's just my opinion. Nevada, Jermaine Goins, thank you for the 5. He says, if JT is a bust, whose fault is it, JT or Larry Johnson? I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think he's a bust. Look, disappointment is a function of expectation. And I think that when you are the number 1 player, there's this great expectation about what he'd be able to do. I think JT's a really good college player. But I think people's expectations that were a little bit higher when he came in. But no, he's definitely certainly not a bust. I mean, this guy's been a 4-year starter at Ohio State. Some of the great defenses that we've had at Ohio State this year will be, one of the legendary defenses at Ohio State. Probably won't compare to 73, different era. But in terms of modern defenses, I think this could be the best defense of the modern college football era. So, and JT's going to be a big part. So anybody who does that, by definition, isn't a bust. A bust is a guy who can't can't play, doesn't play, whatever, he's definitely going to play. I just think that for him, his style is a little bit different, and I think that when his best attribute is he's got that bull rush and he's got that spin move. But if you take that spin move out of his arsenal, which we're not allowing them to spin, because when you spin, you give your back. It's kind of like in mixed martial arts, you never want to give your back. You don't want to give your back when you're spinning. You get out of your lane, and when that happens, bad things happens in a structured defense. So I think he's been, he in particular has been limited by what Knowles was asked him to do. So it's probably a combination of all. It's Knowles, it's Larry, it's JT, and it's hype. So, but look, he's a really good college player, and he is absolutely capable of breaking out this year and just having a dominant year where we're trying to go, wow, where did this come from? I see it all the time, and if how hard he's working in the offseason is any indication, JT's going to have a breakout season this year, and I'm excited for it.
I agree. And again, I don't think JT is a bust because, again, a bust is a guy like Amari Abor, who's a 4 or 5-star guy from Duncanville who didn't play at all. Kyle Dodson, 4 or 5-star, didn't play at all. JT's played and he's done well. He's been efficient. He's done great. I mean, when a guy's the number 1 player in the country and he plays for the number 2 defense in the country last year, like, it's hard for me to call him a bust. But I just think that, the problem is people they're off their expectations. So when you see Jadeveon Clowney be the number 1 guy a few years ago, in 11 or 12 or whatever, and like he's a supernova and he's a pass rusher from day one, and he goes 1 overall in the draft. Like, I think that's kind of where the benchmark is especially for a defensive end. Like, if you're the number 1 player in the country to the end, I mean, 10 sacks as a sophomore is almost a given. But I think that's where we're at with that. So. Again, I don't blame LJ because I think LJ does a great job. But again, JT does great. He's really good. He's a gangster. He's tough. People are tough. It's like he's got every move in the book, but he can't use them all. But again, do you need a guy to use every move in the book, or do you want to play great team defense and be second in the nation in total defense? Because for me, if you're second in the nation in total defense, then that supersedes individual statistics. And I don't care about sacks or any other thing. If you keep guys out of the end zone, I'm good with it. Decent anything for the 5. Can you talk about the decision process day we'll go through in big games when calling timeouts and going for 4th downs? Is it chaos on the headset? Well, Nevada, I imagine you want me to take this one because I've been on the headset before. I think Ryan has got kind of a mental spot where he's like okay, if we're down by this or up by this, or we've got this team in a chokehold and we can go get another foot on their throat, we'll do it. I think that Ryan, the thing that'll be great about Chip Kelly is he can say, hey, Chip, you got 4 downs here. If we're on the 45-yard line going in, feel good about the running game. Hey, you got 4 downs, Chip, and then he'll flip over to talk to Jim Dillon, say, hey, Jim, we're going for it on 4th down, so get your guys ready to go if we get stumped or stopped or whatever. But I think it's pretty calm, especially when you have a guy like Chip Kelly as your OC calling the plays. I think it's a lot easier when you can say, hey, we're going for it. Call your, again, it's a whole different mindset when you've got 2 downs to get 5 yards as opposed to 1 down and then a punt or a field goal. And I think that's really helpful for a guy like Chip Kelly to say, hey, okay, I got two downs to get 5 yards. So let's go speed sweep, let's go play action pass, let's go whatever. So I think it'll be really good. And I think that I don't think it's chaos when you've got good coordinators. And again, I think that I've been around really bad coordinators and I've been around really good coordinators. So when you have good coordinators, like, it's not chaos on the headset. It's more of a matter of fact, hey, get you guys ready to go. If we don't get this, get that defense ready to go, get them riled up and say, hey, we're being aggressive. If we screw up, you have to bail us out. Kind of is what it is. Nevada, D. Sunny asking for the 5. Can you talk about the decision process day we'll go through in big games when calling timeouts and going for 4th downs? Is it chaos on the headset? I know you haven't been on the headset, but what are your thoughts on that? Because again, I know that you're a big Chip Kelly guy. I know you're a big go for it on 4th down guy. But what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, it is, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It is chaotic as heck on a sideline. It's chaotic as heck on a sideline at a high school game. let alone I can't even. I've never been on the sideline for an Ohio State game, but I've been on the sideline for high school games, and it's crazy. I mean, there's like people flying in and out, and there's stuff going on, and it kind of manifests. You see the guys that are kind of losing control a little bit if they have questionable game management practices, usage of timeouts, going forward in situations. And if we're fair, that's what we've had an issue with Ryan Day, because he's been the play caller and the guy that has to look at all those other things. And so you're absolutely right. When you've got, competent coordinators that you can turn this stuff over to, it becomes a heck of a lot less chaotic. It becomes a lot more orderly. And I think if we're talking about the biggest difference with with Chip Kelly being here, and we can talk about the running the quarterback, and we can talk about the two-back offense, and we can talk about all the things we want to talk about Chip Kelly. The biggest difference is Chip Kelly's absolute belief in analytics and using all 4 downs to gain 10 yards. He was one of the original people that did it. He will be a strong voice and advocate for doing it this year. And for all my criticisms of Ryan Day, my biggest criticism of him has been that especially in big, he was willing to do it in the not so big games, but in the big games, man, that 0-0 last year, 4th and 1 from on a bad spot from the 46-yard line, and we're punting, and you ask yourself, would Michigan have punted or would they have gone for it? Everybody knows they would have gone for it 100%. And don't tell me about it's because their offensive line was the greatest offensive line in the history of offensive lines, or Mike. We outgained them last year. Our offense did better than their offense did last year. We did not have the cojones to go for it on 4th and 1, and we didn't have the right type of packages to do it. But Chip Kelly's going to change that, and that is, of all the things that are going on, that's the thing I'm most excited. That's the thing I think will be the most impactful for the offense this year, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting. Rohan Van Gogh, appreciate you. Thanks for the deuce. How's our tight ends? Excited for G. Scott and Will Kazmarek. I have not heard great reports on our tight ends, but tight ends are 1 out of the 11 on offense, and they're not really a huge part of our offense. But, between the tight ends coach and the tight end position, not great. I mean, G. Scott is probably the worst tight end to start at Ohio State in a long time. Will Kazmarek, I think, is just a guy. The thing is, at this point, it's like Jelani Thurman is not getting developed the way we need him to. And that's a reflection of the coach, because I don't think he's being held accountable the way that he needs to be to get Jelani Thurman to be like a first-round type tight end. But just my opinion. Again, I could be dead wrong. But I just think I've seen G. Scott block. I've seen him do a lot of things, and it's not Ohio State standard. But we got to make the best of what we can do. Nevada, Rohan Vangel, says, thank you for the deuce. He says, how's our tight ends? Excited for G. Scott and Will Kazmarek. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I haven't heard great things, but I started to hear good things about Jelani and G coming out of the end of out of spring football, and that gave me some optimism about his Chip loves. I mean, if you look at Chip's like favorite plays, go on the YouTube, you can Google this in terms of kind of his whoobies in terms of his favorite plays are these these option plays, drag passes to the tight end. So he loves to throw that, especially in big situations. So do I think that we'll get more production out of our tight ends? I do, but they're gonna have to make a move in the fall, because we didn't hear about it much in the spring. Summer conditioning, it's hard to really get a handle on it. I think that's a position group. When we talk about all the position groups, and I hear all the fretting about quarterback, I hear all the fretting about offensive line. I think for me, tight end is much more an open question. It's probably less of a priority, to your point, because we use it so infrequently or less frequently. So I'm hopeful though. I'm hopeful because Jelani should be a Marmaduke. Jelani should just be a guy that goes out there and absolutely just dominates and physically imposes his will on defenses. And we haven't seen that yet, but it could. I mean, the switch could go on, and he could go out and have that 3 touchdown game, and we're like, oh, what were you talking about, tight end? Here's our answer. And I'm hoping we see that this year.
Yeah, because it's by far our worst coach position because we hired kids who's never coached before to do it, and the talent's not really there, so it's tough. But again, it's just one guy. So if there's one position you have to punt and have an energy guy who's not very talented to be your coach, that's where you put him. Tight ends, I've seen it before. I've seen guys that are recruiting coordinators or energy guys to be the tight ends coach, but our talent is kind of lackluster, and it's kind of disappointing that we're that bad, especially after on the heels of Cade Stover and Jeremy Ruckert and some of the guys we've had recently. But this is it might be the worst tight end group in the country. And again, it's led by a guy who I don't think is a very good coach, and it's a guy that got beat up by a strength coach. So again, and that's all. Check the resume because I'm right about all of it, and I think you have to get a guy who's in there who's a little bit more professional and does a better job of what he's doing. So again, I'm not hard on people, but if someone's bad at their job and it affects Ohio State football, I'll be hard on them. Poohbeard 12, thank you for being an ultimate. Thank you for the deuce. How many team sacks is that in Caleb Downsworth? I think at least 7 or 8 minimum, just because of the coverage. Again, a lot of times when guys get sacked, it's a coverage sack, and I think Caleb Downs will be sticky to guys that are in the slot. I think he's going to be a big add to guys when he's in, playing a deep middle or deep quarter or whatever he wants to play, deep half. So I think Caleb, again, it's all a function of, this is the hard part, is saying Caleb Downs, because I think Denzel Burke and Dave Sinek-Benes are going to be sticky and really good at corner. I think Caleb, Lathan Ransom, Malik Hartford, really, really good coverage. Jordan Hancock's the best nickel in the United States of America, so it's hard to measure Caleb because we've got if Caleb didn't even come back, I still think if Caleb stayed at Bama, I still think we'd have the best secondary in the country, even without Caleb. But you had Caleb, who's probably the best player in the country. It's astounding how good it could be. But Nevada, how many team sacks is adding Caleb Downsworth to you? I'm going to say 7 to 8, maybe 10, just because of how sticky the coverage will be. But it's hard to desensitize what I think Denzel Burke and Dave Sinek-Benes and Jordan Hancock in in another year of Jim Knowles' defense, what that will do. But what are your thoughts, Nevada?
Yeah, I'll say half a sack a game, so I'll go with 8. But he's an exceptional rusher too. Like, some guys just have a knack for getting it. So when we bring that pressure, when we talk about bringing that 6-man front and actually bringing those guys, if you bring him, he gets home, man. And not everybody has that ability. Some guys just kind of naturally latch on to linemen, and they stick to them, and they just can't fight through. Caleb is slippery, man. He's such a good athlete. He's so slippery when he's not ball hawking in the secondary, because he's one of those guys that's just got a nose for the football. He'll be rushing, and when he rushes, he's so athletic, he gets home. So I think he's going to affect it on both ends, and I think he'll have a profound impact on the sack stats this year for sure.
Totally agree. Blue Wolverine, thank you for the 50. They've been an ultra member as well. Paid forward, and as always, go Bucks. I didn't see the blue part, so I appreciate you on that. Good show. Nevada. We get one more. We got Mello coming through. Oh, this is a dream, Mello. This would be amazing. Thank you for being ultra. Thank you for the 5. Thank you for being one of the greatest members of the staff and this entire crew, Mello. You say my favorite linebacker in high school is coming to OSU Friday, Tyler Atkinson. I would kill for Tyler Atkinson to be a Buckeye. I think he's a Bulldog. I love him. I love Victor Atkinson, who's his father. We did a Tyler Atkinson Phenom video 3 years ago. Got like 50,000 views on YouTube. So this is a kid who I think is a monster. I think he's like a Javon Curse type when he shows up wherever he goes. Monster pass rusher, dominated camp last year. But Tyler's a different cat. I'd love to get him. I have no hopes of getting him. I'd love to get him more than anything in the world. But I think he's a Georgia Bulldog. He's from Georgia. He's a freak of nature. He's like if J.J. Smith played defensive end, that'd give you Tyler Atkinson. But Nevada, Mello, again, Mello, I appreciate you, brother, as always. You've been ultra for the 5. He says, my favorite linebacker in high school is coming to OSU this Friday, Tyler Atkinson. Check out the film. Your thoughts on Tyler Atkinson?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, great player, great family, and hey, he's coming up. You never know. You never know with recruiting. Like betting. If I'm betting, and I am a betting man, yeah, I'm betting the Bulldogs. But you never know. Weirder things have happened. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. I remember we did a video on another phenom years ago that with Des Jones from Jersey or whatever it was, and he ends up in the class. You would never guess. So, Tyler, like you said, we did on him like 3 years ago when he was he wasn't little, but he was young, and yeah, great player. I think it's a long shot, but you got a shot, so let's see what happens. You get him in there. Some kids look at them, they're like, hey, I want to bus convention. I want to do. Everybody thinks I'm going to go here. I'm going to go somewhere else. So maybe that's one of those things, and we'll see.
I'd love it. I think he's an amazing player. His dad's a great person. He'd be such an asset for the program, but until they shake me, man, they're Georgia Bulldogs. Nevada, let's wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts? DK Moore, Tyler Atkinson, the rest that we've talked about today.
Yeah, just huge, huge, huge recruiting weekend for Ohio State coming up. I mean, 2 weeks ago was big. Last week was bigger than that. This week is the big daddy. So if you're looking for what's the weekend where if you had to point to that one weekend when all the stars are there, it's this weekend. A lot of exciting things happen around Ohio State, and we'll have it here covered. So thank you guys for being here. If you could want to do us a favor, leave us a like, hit that thumbs up. It really helps us, helps other people find the video as well because it kicks in the analytics. So just thank you guys all for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you guys so much. Again, a huge show. Appreciate you guys each and every night. Again, this has been awesome. So big official visit weekend coming up. David Sanders Jr., a lot of big time stars coming in this weekend. So see what Ryan Day and the NIL funds are made of. But I think that we've got a really good shot on a lot of this. DK Moore, I'm telling you, he's the guy they're zeroed in on, and it'll be very interesting to see if we can outbid everybody. But he's the guy Brian Hartline and Ryan Day want to capture this class. So we'll get into all of it. So if you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also, click this little alert bell. Pooh Beard is bringing in a super chat as I'm wrapping the show up. So I appreciate you guys. You guys want to keep it going? Super chat of Pooh Beard 12. Thank you for being ultra. Thank you for the 5, 4th and 1 Super Bowl on the line. Andy, what are you calling Mahomes option keeper? Easy money. Can't wait for Chip Kelly. Oh God, yeah. If I'm the Chiefs, then I've got Mahomes, and I've got Kelsey, and I've got me playing running back. I'm going to an option keeper to him. Maybe out to one of the receivers, and then Kelsey. That's easy money. So of course I'm doing that. That's why like Will Howard with Quinn Sean and JJ Smith, like that's stealing. You can't cover all of it. So Pooh Beard, that's my deal. Also, thanks for the deuce, Gunnar Paternal. Thanks for the deuce and being an ultra member. Chester for president. I wish. I don't think he's gonna be the president of Ohio State, but he would slay the beast, and is the smartest, most generous person I've ever met in the athletic sphere. So he would do great work. So I'd love to have Jim Tressel do that. With that being said, if you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also click that little alert bell if you guys enjoy all that we do. Show up every single night, 7 p.m. We're ready to rock. Again, we appreciate all that you guys are here for each and every night. Again, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. Again, this is a huge show because you guys made it another great night for us. Again, we've broken every record this month. It's almost comical how much support you guys give us, but we appreciate it. We never take it for granted. So thank you so very much. Again, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. We are going to check out for the night. Be back at 7 tomorrow with the Panthers game going on. So we'll try to crank it out 7 to 8. Be ready to roll. But again, leave us that like, click subscribe, click that little alert bell, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much. Have a great Thursday night. Go Bucks.